Thank you, and hello everyone. So the EVA has been around for about 3 years now, and our main work has consisted on accepting submissions of variation data for many species. And at the beginning of this year, we we reached an agreement with the NCBI in the US, by which we would split the accessioning space in two. So NCBI would stay responsible for the for accessioning human variants, and the EVA would be responsible for maintaining and issuing new accessions for non-human variants. But there's still some exchange of human information, so I would like to describe the whole picture and take any questions or concerns that you may have at the end of the presentation. So I'll explain a bit what the background of all this is and what the NCBI announcement consisted in, how we will ensure the continuity of SS and RS accessioning, what are we doing with the existing DBSNP data, how we will exchange data with them in the future, how the EVA release model will look like, and what our timelines are. So for those who don't know, an accession is basically a unique identifier for an entity. So this could apply to anything. So for instance, in the EBI, we assign study accessions via ENA for proteins via UniProt, and NCBI does the same for locus or variants via DBSNP, and for structural variants via DBVAR. So in the space of variant accessions, there are two types of this. Ones are the SSIDs. So every time researcher submits a variant for a specific study, this gets assigned an SSID. And then periodically, variants that are located in the same position and have the same variant type get assigned an RSID. And well, the periodicity of these RS releases vary among species. So human and mouse are released very frequently because the amount of data is greater, but other pieces have been taking a longer time traditionally. So at the end of last year, EBI and NCBI started discussing the future of variant accessioning, and we decided that, well, the situation for non-human variants wasn't optimal, and sharing the responsibility could be beneficial for the community. So in September this year, DBSNP and DBVAR stopped accepting non-human submissions. Well, it was also announced that by the 1st of November, non-human data wouldn't be retrievable via the DBSNP website anymore, but this service hasn't been switched off yet. But anyway, the place where non-human submissions have to be directed to is the European Variation Archive. If you try to make a submission to DBSNP or DBVAR for non-human variants, they will point you at us. So, and well, what we want to guarantee with this split is that the existing SS and RSIDs will be maintained. So we will import all the existing IDs from DBSNP and DBVAR, and in the future, NCBI will issue new human accessions. So if they receive new submissions, they will assign variant accessions for this, and we will do the same for non-human. We will assign an SSID after a successful submission. So we have some submission requirements, and after the data sets have passed all these validations, we will assign SSIDs to the variants, and we're aiming to generate RSIDs every 6 months. So in the past, for some of the, I think it was the plant species, the time span to get these RS generated was maybe a year or two. So we want to reduce the window, and currently we're aiming to do it every 6 months. So as I said, we have some requirements for the submissions. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the submission process to EVA, but for those who are, be aware that the existing process is not going to change. So we hope this will make things simpler for existing users of the EVA. Other requirements that we have are that the assembly the variants are mapped against must be accessioned by INSDC. So the assemblies can be directed at EBI, NCBI, or basically these two institutes, and they will assign an other accession for the assembly. We also have a metadata template to provide some basic information about what the samples of the study are, what are their characteristics, the structure of the analysis, etc. So metadata that could be relevant for future data retrieval. And the final validation that we run is checking that the VCF files are valid according to the VCF specification. So those who have submitted to DBSNP in the past may know that they had their own derivative from the VCF format. We have decided to use the standard, but we really want to adhere to it. So we develop a validation suite that anyone can run on a Linux machine. So you can use this to validate any VCF that you have. It doesn't need to be tied to an EVA submission. And it also includes a tool to fix some of the errors reported by the validator. So we hope this tool can be useful for the community just as a general purpose tool, not just in the context of our submissions. So with the existing DBSNP data, what we're currently doing is we're importing the SS and RSIDs for multiple species, and also the genotypes. And I forgot to include it in the presentation, but we will also include the allele frequencies. So the species we're working with are, well, things like model organisms. We have mouse, rat. We have others. We will have several primates. There are some parasites. So there are several species that, even if they're not human, could be relevant for human or clinical research. So DBSNP currently has approximately 300 species, of which approximately 80 were released at some point. The other have been partially processed, but we're not sure how much we will be able to do with those. So from those 84 that were released officially, some of the assemblies are not in INSDC. So for now, we're going to leave those out because they don't satisfy the EVA requirements. But hopefully at some point in the future, we will be able to get these assemblies accession, and then we will be able to have them included in the EVA website. And what we're going to do at the moment is prioritizing by species supported by Ensemble, which is one of the largest services supported by EBI. So the data displayed via Ensemble is curated. It's not just the raw data. They include a lot of additional information to the variants. So we think that by prioritizing the species they support, this will be more value in the short term. And the way we are going to present this information is on a batch base. So in every species supported by DBSNP, the submissions are identifiable, and because of the EVA we also identify each study that gets submitted. We want to make our displays as consistent as possible, so we will import each of these submissions from DBSNP separately, and this way people will be able to filter them independently on the EVA website too. Regarding specifically human data, we will keep exchanging it with DBSNP. There will be no exchange for non-human data. So the way this will work is we will keep accepting human submissions, and any we receive will be brokered to DBSNP, and periodically we will import the SS and RSIDs that they generate. And our release model will consist on, well, you could say 2 types of releases. So the final picture will consist on 2 components. One is the existing EVA archive. So we have a website and API that can be used to consume the submitted variants, the genotypes, like getting all the information that's there. And we don't have a specific release date for this service, so we just get a submission, process it, and once we're done with it, it's public. You don't need to wait, say, 3 months for it to get displayed on the website. So this, in terms of the accessions, what this website will display is the latest accessions by default, but we intend to support searching by historical accessions. So during from one build to another, DBSNP runs some remappings or correct the data, and in the process some RS are merged or they are deprecated. But because the data sets that have been already published made reference to these old accessions, we want to make sure that it's possible to search by the latest ones, but also by the ones that were merged or deprecated. And well, it will be possible to download the data using the regular API, so requesting a region of the genome and viewing it on the website. But we're also working on a service for streaming these results in VCF, which will be possible to ingest them in an analysis tool that supports this format. And then the second component of these releases will be what we call RSID releases, and will be similar to what DBSNP currently do with their database dumps or the DBSNP builds. So the idea would be to merge the SSIDs into RSs every 6 months. We will make a release for each species, and each of these releases will consist in a VCF file as close as possible as the one currently generated by DBSNP. So it will include the RSIDs, the genomic coordinates, and the list of EBA studies that serve as supporting evidence for these variants. These IDs, what they will allow is then the user to go to the main EVA API and query the detailed information such as the genotypes and the frequencies. And along with these VCFs, we will also provide a summary of the total data that's available for a species, say the total number of variants, the number of variants that were merged, the variants that were deprecated, added, etc. for each of these builds. So we hope this will be enough information to be able to use our archive, but if any of you could have any other requirements, please let me know, because we're trying to gather as much information from external users as possible. So the timeline for this is not completely up to date. So in September 2017, we started importing the latest non-human DB-SNP data. I'm afraid we haven't been able to start issuing SSIDs in November. We intend to do this in the first quarter of 2018, and around April, we will also release the first RSID release for EVA. So, well, thank you everyone for your time. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's the place where we publish most of our updates regarding this transition process. We also have a mailing list where we make some announcements. If you have any questions about the transition, the submission process, the API, or anything, you can also contact the help desk. And if you decide to use the EVA website or the Web Services API and you find any bugs or would like to request any features, you're free to fill a ticket in our GitHub repositories. So if any of you have any questions,